former NMP, businessman, lifestyle sexy influencer.
Thank you.
Calvin,
Thank you for your
how's the
introduction.
transition to be a lifestyle sexy influencer going?
Well, I think I just posted something about our defecating habits. So
Oh,
I
wow.
think that's quite important.
Right.
We need to look at other things besides politics.
Yes.
So I think one thing is that we should also look at our shit every single day to make
That's
sure
true.
that the texture is okay, that we are shitting normally. Our health is very important.
Right. What is
Yeah.
the correct texture though?
I think it cannot be too soft. I
Cannot be too
think
soft?
I also posted a BBC article on Facebook that if you're going to have soft poo regularly, people are more likely to die.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So you need to poo regularly, and you need to make sure that it's not too soft, not too hard.
Right.
And also, most importantly, you need to see that there are no changes to your pooing habits. Because once you see some irregular changes, you better go see a doctor.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I think we need to all look after our health, right, and not to get too obsessed with politics, with making money. I think health is the most important.
That's right. Oh,
Yes.
I mean, we've been talking shit for the last 2 minutes, but
Yes.
my wife is quite a big
Yes.
fan of you.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
She reads your your posts quite regularly,
Okay,
sharing
well-
with me.
Okay, but mostly on the health and lifestyle bits, not the politics, right?
No, mainly politics.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
interestingly, she's quite interested in politics
Okay,
after
okay.
reading you.
That's good.
Yeah. So, but okay, today we're going to talk about a little bit more political stuff.
Yes.
Don't know whether
Which
you
can be
noticed-
quite bullshit as well.
yeah, I
Yes.
suppose. I think just last week, right?
Yes.
2 big events.
Yes.
On Feb 17, there was a Pritam's verdict,
Yes.
right? And the day after, the budget speech itself by PM. Let's talk about the trial, the verdict then.
I think one commentator very astutely said that people have already made up their minds. So
Right.
people who are going to vote who are not going to be affected are not going to be affected. People who are going to think a certain way are going to think a certain way.
Right.
So personally, I don't think it's going to affect things very much. Maybe only at the margins, people might have maybe some swing voters might have some question marks. Because of the verdict, does it mean that there's something wrong with Pritam, so and so? But I think that the observer who said that people are not going to get swayed much is probably right.
Right.
Because I think that what he was convicted of, and I guess it is obvious from the sentence. I mean, in the sense that it wasn't what he was punished with wasn't heavy enough to disqualify him,
Yeah.
which means that probably philosophically it probably means that what he did wasn't major enough to disqualify him. So I don't think it's going to affect the elections very much.
Right. But I just wanted to point out what the judge mentioned. I think he had some very quite sharp words for him. I quote, "Thus, it is clear that throughout this time, his desired laundry list of actions for Ms. Khan to carry out were in his mind but not out of his mouth." I thought that was pretty sharp from
Yeah,
him.
I think whatever the judge said, he has said, is whether during the election campaign, the PAP is going to repeat these words. I think they have to be very careful, right? I think there is a certain segment of the younger society that is not open and very resistant to what they call character assassination, right? So they get very upset. As you can see in the last few elections, I think things are quite different from Lee Kuan Yew's time.
Yeah.
They have to be, I don't know what their PR strategy is going to be. They're going to have to make the decision whether to use these kind of quotes or not when it comes to election time. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned about people have made up their minds right? Because they are probably hardcore fans.
Yeah,
of
I think
Pritam.
judging from previous elections, I think about 40% of the electorate are hardcore PAP supporters. Maybe 20 to 30% are hardcore opposition supporters.
Right.
So if this trend continues, Singapore is quite unusual. If this trend continues, then we do have a rather large swing voter demographic.
Right.
So then I guess how much of this 30% actually feels that the court case is important enough to change their minds what I feel will be topmost in their minds, which would be cost of living concerns, right? So bread and butter issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But if you compare, I guess, sagas with sagas, you have, of course, the Raisa Kanting.
Yes.
And then Workers' Party, we have the Leon and Nico. And then the PAP itself, former speaker and Cheng Li Hui.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So do you think it will cost, I guess, any votes, or will it sway this?
I think Singapore, being a very small country, we are very susceptible to influence from global politics.
Yeah.
And I think the largest superpower in terms of soft power is the US. I think some people will be thinking, if the US can elect a felon, what's the big deal, right? So I think no matter what, these things do have an effect on people's mind, not only in Singapore, I think everywhere in the world.
Right.
So I think that I believe that bread and butter issues will still be topmost of people's minds.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I also need to be to say that doesn't mean that it's good. Competence is important, but I think character is also important.
Yeah. Integrity,
so
character.
I think the Singapore electorate, I've always been very skeptical about the resistance to what they call character assassination. I think last election I made a post to say what is gutter politics and what's not gutter politics, right? So I think you can put it in a matrix, whether it's true and whether it's relevant. I think if it's true and relevant, I don't think it is gutter politics. But there are also, so I'll give you an example, right? So I think if, for example, you say that a person's brother, he committed a crime, right? Yeah. That is true, but that's not relevant, right? Because it's not relevant to his own character, his own credibility. Some things can be untrue and irrelevant, which is even worse. Some things can be untrue but relevant. That's untrue in the first place, so that shouldn't come into play. Yeah. But if things are true and relevant, I think politicians should speak up and say that, hey, this person has done something. We have to ask ourselves whether this person has the right character to be a leader of the country. Yeah. And it's really up to the electorate to judge. And I think that's what elections are for. I mean, if the electorate judges that even though an accusation is true and relevant, they still want to vote the person in, then that's democracy for you.
Right. I mean, just want to talk about gutter politics a bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned that.
Yes.
And I think it's a lot of times about perception, right? Because, voters will think that, the ruling party being the bullies, and your opposition being the underdogs, and, just mudslinging all the time. Even though maybe from the ruling party's point of view, it's about integrity and character.
Yes.
But most of the time, people will just see that you're just bullying.
Yeah, so I think, like what I just said, we need to differentiate between what's mudslinging and what is true and relevant, right? Yeah. Mudslinging is when you are making untrue or irrelevant accusations. So I think that's mudslinging. So a perceptive electorate has to make the distinction between mudslinging and genuine questions on a candidate's ability to deliver, a candidate's ability to lead. Right. But I think it's also the tone.
The tone,
right?
yes.
I think you can question, but not be offensive, not be insulting, not to go all bulldog, be aggressive. I think I reckon that the younger electorate is very resistant
they don't take too kindly to such
this sort of tactics.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So I think that the tone of the electioneering of the ruling party will have to change this time.
Right.
Yeah.
But given that, I suppose it's a period of great transition also.
Given that the current Prime Minister Lawrence Wong is a more amiable character, right? And if he's going to lead the election and the electioneering, the campaigns are going to be colored by how he feels electioneering to be, I think the transition should be quite fast and smooth.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's not an aggressive kind of person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I want to point out something during the doorstop after Pritam's verdict was announced. I think someone asked him, now that you are convicted, do you think you should step down? And I think he gave quite a good soundbite. He said, I think the need of the hour is for me to step up.
Yeah, so I think Pritam is a natural politician.
Right.
I think I've said that many times. He's a good orator. He makes good speeches.
Yeah.
He reacts very, very fast. So when he said that it's time for me to step up and not to step down, I think that is a very memeable moment, right? It becomes a meme.
Yeah.
And I think it's these kind of sound bites, can be used and I think Workers' Party are very good at this, very slick in the way they use this kind of memes into a punchline, right, to their advantage. And I think they are probably going to use it during their election campaign.
Right. You met him, I think, a couple of times.
I know him quite well.
coffee.
I've known him for over 20 years.
Right,
I've known
right.
him from before politics.
Right.
Yeah.
So he always has that spark in
I
him.
think his biggest weakness was that he's a Manchester United supporter. So me, given that I'm a Liverpool supporter, so when we were young, our biggest disagreements were always about football.
Right.
But unfortunately, during that time, I was always on the losing end because
Yeah.
if you remember 20 years ago, Liverpool was terrible, right? And Man United under Sir Alex was flying high. So but now tables have turned. So.
Yeah.
No, I think that he is a moderate. He's a natural orator. He knows how to be a good politician.
Right.
But of course, now with the court case, there's this Damocles sword that is hanging over him. I don't know how the electorate is going to react to it.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned good politician. I just wanted to point out something interesting also. I think throughout the trial, he was wearing his suit, his long sleeve shirt,
Yes.
and all. But on the day of the verdict, he was wearing a short sleeve blue shirt. Very
Yeah.
Workers' Party like.
Yes.
When he came out to do the doorstop, he actually put on the pin, the Workers' Party pin. Do you think that was a sign of something?
I am not sure, but given that the Workers' Party runs a very tight ship in terms of PR and communication, I wouldn't be surprised if it's intentional. But I think we need to also understand that a lot of what the Workers' Party does is actually copying the best practices of the PAP.
Interesting.
Right? So you need to give credit where credit is due, where the PAP has set a very, very high standard. They are the benchmark for politics locally. And a lot of what they are trying to do, what they have done right. So for example, Lau Tia Kiang very smoothly handing power over to Pritam Singh and stepping back, just like how Lee Kuan Yew stepped back for Goh Chok Tong, and Goh Chok Tong stepped away for SM Lee, so on and so forth. These are best practices that were set by the PAP, right? And being moderate, being centrist. So, I think we need to give credit where credit is due. I think the PAP has set the benchmark. Let's not over romanticize what the Workers' Party is good at, what they're not good at. A lot of what they're doing is actually making sure that they're keeping up with the best practices of the PAP.
Right. Would you think that that would make voters, Singaporeans, feel that same but different?
Actually, that is the characteristic of a working Westminster first past the post system.
Right.
Both parties at the center are same but different. Right. So if you look at how parties that get into power with the Westminster system in Singapore, Australia, the UK, Canada, any country with a working Westminster system, you'll find that there's not much difference in what they're actually saying. Right. One is center left, one is center right, and in fact, I think. Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan said that last election, right, that the Workers' Party is basically PAP-like, that, they see what the PAP is doing, they take a small step left, but that's a good thing, that's not a bad thing, right? So a good, cohesive society, a politically cohesive society needs to congregate around the center. Unlike the American system, where that encourages polarization. And it encourages polarization because of the primary system, where the two parties have to campaign on the extremes to appeal to their own party base before they try to meet in the center. But by the time they meet in the center, society has been polarized.
I see. That's a good point. I just wonder where this leave. I guess PSP, Progress Singapore Party.
So in a first past the post Westminster system, normally there is no space for third party. So there will only be two major parties, and the way it seems right now, it should be the Workers' Party. So if someone wants to stake its claim as a second party right now, they need to make a move now.
Yeah.
Right? So if they don't make a move now, it's just like business, right? You need to have a differentiating factor. You need to have a USP. So the Workers' Party has staked its claim as a moderate party. If the PSP wants to stake the same claim, it's very hard to differentiate. So I think they have cleverly, or in a way cynically, looked at how politics have shaped around the world, and they have seen that there is a space for a populist party, a populist nativist party, right? All across the developed world, because of globalization, there has been a disenfranchisement of a certain demographic. So I think the PSP has staked its claim as a populist nativist party. There is a space for that in the political spectrum. It's very scary. It's not something that I would encourage, but I think everybody needs a voice.
Right.
I don't think, luckily, that fortunately for Singapore, that they form a majority. I'm not even sure that they form a significant plurality. But I think that's their brand. I think I think SDP has a more difficult time, right? So they've always tried to be the liberal-leaning, Western type democracy, human rights kind of party. I think their demographic is even smaller. I've seen that in the last few years, they seem to be moving away from that. It seems that they are saying a lot of things that the PSP are saying, right? They become more populist, more nativist. So it'll be interesting how it pans out. But in general, in a Westminster first past the post system, I mean, it's just like the Sith lords, right? They cannot be more than two, right? There will be two, and who's going to be the second one?
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack for the day itself. Let's move on to the next day. Right. There's the budget speech. Do you think the budget addresses Singaporeans' concerns before the election, at least?
I don't think it's more importantly is what Singaporeans think, and there was this survey, right? That was done on Singaporeans' reactions to the budget, and I think the majority say that not enough has been done.
Yes.
But this is a smaller majority than before. I think some foreign media also picked up on it.
Yeah.
It's not a very insightful survey, because I think if you go everywhere in the world and ask whether more can be done, people will always say more can be done. I mean, no one's going to say, I'm sure I've got enough, you don't need to give me any more. So I don't think the results are very insightful.
Right.
But I think more importantly, I'm sure you're going to ask me this later, but I might as well just address it now. I think Pritam's speech was quite significant. I think he made a very powerful speech.
Right.
He made a very powerful speech because it's very emotionally appealing. I think it's very important. One of the more important parts of his speech was he acknowledged that the government has said that all the right indices are moving in the right direction. Core inflation is down, income inequality is down, incomes are up, rising. Unemployment is down, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
You will notice that President Biden also made the same kind of speech, same kind of pitch rather during the time when he wasn't replaced by Kamala Harris yet. That by the time his term was up, all the measures are moving in the right direction, right? But the problem is that people's lives are not a snapshot. Right? So now you're saying, okay, now snapshot 2025, things are better. But people's lives, what they remember is what happened in the preceding five 5 years.
Yes.
So they feel a certain way. They feel that cost of living went up. They feel that things were not very well. Sure, vouchers have been given out. So I think this is also a strength and a weakness. It's a double-edged sword of the ruling party. They are excellent technocrats.
Yeah.
So they are very good at factual things. They are very competent. I don't think that anything that they have done is logically or technically wrong. But they need to look at the emotional part of stuff. Going out on elections and just spouting facts and figures to people, they're not going to. It doesn't address the root emotions. What they want to hear is that I hear you, I empathize, I understand your pain, I've tried my best, and maybe even that is not enough. What would actually help them, again, this is my own opinion, is to let these figures sustain for a bit. So I think that the later they call the elections, the better. But again, it's very hard to tell, right? Some shit might hit the fan in the next couple of months, and then it makes it even worse. Yeah. But I think people need to feel these better figures because it's very, very emotional. It's a psychological thing. You cannot argue people into feeling a certain way with facts and figures. I think what happened yesterday was that, I think that the leader of the opposition was wrong. I mean, the things he said was actually wrong, right? Yeah. That GST is not needed and that GST turbocharged inflation. You cannot prove that. But it's it's got a very, very strong emotional appeal. Yeah. And after I posted that, my lovely friend Ben Leong as well, he also wrote a piece. Yeah. And being the academic that he is, he used facts and figures and logic. Yeah. And I told him that this is not going to work. No one cares about your facts and figures. People feel what they want to feel. Yeah. And politics is not about just facts and figures. Politics is about psychology. It's about emotional appeal. So I think that what the PAP could have probably done was, again, of course, this is hindsight 2020, was not increase GST during global inflation, not because it wasn't the right thing to do, but because it gives political ammunition to their enemies, right? You can say, hey, prices are already rising. Why did you raise prices more? Yeah. It may not necessarily be so. The figures might not be so. And because of the vouchers that were given out, for most people, this is not true, right? So facts and figures, if you're given $800 in vouchers, I think Prof. Ben Leong said that as well. Yeah. If it's 1%, that means that you would have had to spend an extra $80,000, right? Yeah. And most people are not going to spend an $80,000. So the facts and figures are that most people's GST increase has been offset by the vouchers. Yeah. But people don't feel that, right? Whether they actually feel that when they go into the supermarket, because they're not going to see things in a snapshot of time. They're going to, over the last 5 years, they're going to ask themselves, has my life been more expensive? Have eggs been more expensive? Has milk and bread been more expensive? And I think the answer is yes.
Right. This points to a bit of the book smarts versus street smarts kind of thing. Because from what I'm hearing, at least the PAP is technocrats, and they're very good at logic and all, very book smart. Yes. I guess from the Workers' Party, quite street smart on that front. Do you think there's a need to balance things out on both sides?
All successful politicians need to do both. Right. In a normal democracy, right? So not only do you need to be competent and in managing a country, you need to be able to persuade the people of a certain vision. Yeah. So I think Lee Kuan Yew had both of these competencies, right? Yeah. So he was not only competent and smart, he was also very charismatic. And back then it was so important because he had to convince the people to buy into some of the things he did that needed the people to follow him into something that was probably very wildly unpopular. So, for example, NS, right. You have to convince mothers and fathers to give their sons over to the state. Yep. And even HDB, you have to convince people to imagine living in something that for them is unimaginable. right? And say, please,
and uproot their house.
yeah, get rid of your atap house. I'm going to promise you that this is going to be, never fear, this is going to be a metropolis, right?
Yep.
So you need to have that ability to galvanize. And I think the PAP has been a victim of its own success because...
the bar is too high.
No, because they have been so dominant.
Right.
They haven't had a need to be politicians. They only needed to be technocrats, very competent managers of the economy, very competent managers of the country, which is very important. But now I think that was an anomaly, right? It's anomalous for any functioning democracy to have one party have 90% or 100% of the seats. So it's going to come down and down and down. I think part of the reason is because of Lee Kuan Yew and Pioneer Generation's charisma and their achievements, right? But now it's the post-LKY era. They're going to have to stand on their own 2 feet. So I think it's a very good chance for PM Lawrence to have a start with a clean slate with the 4G and say, hey, give me a chance. This is my vision. Please, come with me and believe in my vision.
In his speech, I think the leader of opposition also spoke about, other than the cost of living, there's also competition from foreigners. Of course, the GST increase we should talk about. Do you think the competition from foreigners part will be a key topic?
I think at every election, the PSP will try to play this up, because that is their USP, that's their pitch, right? They are a nativist, populist policy. I'm not sure how much the Workers' Party is going to play this up. They have been quite moderate in their claims. It's always a very good emotional hook there'll always be a segment of society that is left behind, and it's always easier to blame other people than local people. So people are going to play this up, but I think that the PAP has done enough in the last 10 years to take away a lot of that anger. Not necessarily a good thing, because I am more of a liberal on that side. I believe that we do need foreigners. I think we've become too stringent on how we have allowed foreigners to come and work in Singapore. And of course, the elephant in the room is that we have a super aged society. And with a super aged society, we need to address problems of immigration.
This turbocharging the inflation. Is there really no other way but to raise the GST in your opinion?
Okay, so I think those are 2 different questions, right? Whether there's any other way to raise taxes other than GST, and whether GST turbocharged inflation. For the first question, I don't think, because this is a value judgment, right? So if you look at the various forms of tax, I just wrote an article about this as well. If you look at corporate tax Singapore is actually a competition of countries. So we always have to make sure that our corporate tax is not going to be higher than our competitors, like Hong Kong, for example, right? So I don't think we have much space to move if we look at what our competitors are doing. If you look at income tax actually hits the middle class more than the wealthy, because most wealthy people have no earned income, right? So you're going to hit the middle class, at the most the upper middle class. Wealth taxes is notoriously hard to enforce because wealth is very highly mobile. So what we have done is that we are taxing the most immobile part of wealth, which is property. So if you go ask people with like GCBs and large houses and expensive condos, they all these new citizens, for example, they have been paying a lot more in taxes because the property tax for the upper end of properties have increased quite a lot. So that has already been increased by quite a bit. So if you look at the other forms of taxes, there's really not much more to move. And GST is a form of what we call a value-added tax. A value-added tax is a broad-based tax. A broad-based tax is actually a good form of tax because it doesn't put a lot of it doesn't rely on a narrow base of the population for taxation, right? So it is quite a stable form of tax. The problem with VAT's GST is that it's regressive, right? In theory, it's regressive, but the way that the PAP has done it is that they have given permanent subsidies to the lower income, which means that they take from everyone and then they subsidize the lower income. So I think that taxes have to be increased. Taxes have to be increased even though right now we are having a surplus, so on and so forth, but in the medium to long term, we are a super aged society, which means that our tax-paying base is going to shrink, and then our non-working adult base, the old people, is going to increase by a lot, and then we're going to have to spend on these people. So I don't think there is any question that taxes have to increase. I don't think even the opposition makes a very strong point about this. They just believe that the revenues can be raised by another method, right? So one method that the Workers' Party have suggested is to increase the net increase, in the net contribution from investments from 50% to 60 or 70. I think that's a value judgment. It's a very fair alternative, right? It's a very fair alternative because we can say that, hey, we need to spend on people now instead of saving 50% for the future. We need to spend it now. What is enough? 50, 60, 70? I think that's up for debate. The second thing is whether it turbocharged inflation. I think it is a very smart electioneering thing to say, but you need to prove it, right? So the only way you can prove this is through an econometric model. Run a model to see whether if without the GST increase, inflation would have been more or less. But even then, I don't think it's going to be very. I think the confidence level of it being correct is going to be low because there are so many variables. So the more important point is the third point, which is my point, is that regardless of the facts, raising GST during inflation gives political ammunition to people, right? And no matter what, people are going to feel very buisong, right? It's like whether it's right or wrong, they're going to feel that it's right. That, hey, there's really inflation and you are increasing prices. So whether the facts are correct or not, they're going to feel this way, right? And no matter how many vouchers you give them, because it's over a 5-year period, they're going to feel that the government made things worse, rightly or wrongly.
Right. You mentioned about one of Singapore's closest competitors, I suppose, Hong Kong, right? Just want to point out that I think the several MPs are using Hong Kong as an example. I think Mr. Liang Eng Hua mentioned about how Hong Kong is running budget deficit for 3 straight years. And I think Ms. Fumi Hua said the same yesterday. So how, I guess the fortunes have, it's almost like a mirror, somewhat, if you look at Hong Kong.
Hong Kong is not a sovereign country, right? They're part of China. So they can afford to run a deficit because they have a big brother behind them, right? So I don't think that makes them, in a way, more formidable competitor because they have a big brother behind them and we don't.
We used to have one, I suppose. But there's no more. I suppose the last thing I want to talk about, which is I think quite close to you also, is about two NMPs quitting. I think the previous week. Raj, Joshua Thomas, and Syed Harun Al-Habsi, they resign. So there are speculation, right? They are joining the GE. So I think this was the first time any NMP had resigned before the end of the term. What's your take on that?
So I think the main criticism is about their non-partisan nature. It destroys the non-partisan nature of the NMPs, so on and so forth. I actually disagree with that, right? Because I don't think that you cannot. If you're going to look into a person's personality and values, nobody is truly non-partisan. Nobody is neutral, right? We all have our own political bias. So it's whether we are able to do our jobs as NMPs when we are in Parliament, despite our political bias. So we need to be independent, we need to be neutral, and very importantly, NMPs are not under any party whip, which means that they can vote in any way they want. So I think they are free to run for elections if they want, and they are free to support whatever party they want if they want, when they are not NMPs anymore and when they are not doing their jobs in Parliament. What I am against is them quitting their jobs halfway. think is it halfway? I think less than halfway.
Yeah, I think
Right?
for
They've got about a year left to go.
a year left.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe more than halfway.
Yeah.
Right. Before their terms are up, in order to run, because they have committed to do a job, so they should finish it.
Yeah.
But that said, this criticism is the same for Madam Halima. It's the same for President Taman, right? So both of them also quit their jobs in order to run for another office. And I think in general, I'm a bit skeptical about these things, right? I think that if you have committed to do a job, you should finish it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm not sure about the sentiment because there are some people saying that because it's a bit disrespectful to the role of NMPs, you know.
Yeah, but if you're going to criticize them for that, then you should also criticize President Taman and Madam Halima, right? She quit as Speaker of Parliament in order to run for president.
Right. Right. I mean, we are still waiting for any news or
But I don't think they will quit to run for the opposition. To be very frank, right?
Right. Why not?
I think Singaporeans being very kiasu, I think they are going to quit if they believe that they have better prospects. Yeah.
That's true. But that would be assuming that the PAP this time around will have a better prospect.
Yeah. So in a way, they are also taking a risk. They might have quit being an NMP run and they might lose, right?
Right. I mean, talking about fortunes, then I suppose, what do you think would be a satisfactory result for the PAP?
I think a satisfactory result for the PAP would be the status quo.
Right.
They don't win anymore. They don't lose anymore. I think that's good enough because I think every election is for the PAPs to lose, right? From now on, because they are in such a dominant and unnatural, anomalous position that like I said, no normally functioning Westminster system has one party with 90% of the seats. So I think every election they are gonna lose a bit more here and there when a credible opposition feels credible candidates. I think the electorate will give them a chance.
Now, there's a hypothetical scenario. If they were to win back Aljunied or Sengkang or Hougang, what would that do to the local political system? Do you think there will be a big pushback or what? Because it may feel like, because I mean PM Wong mentioned.
I think that human beings in general, not only Singaporeans, have an aversion to monopolies. They don't like dominance.
Yeah.
Whether it's in business or politics.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to make people, if by some stroke of fortune they're going to win back Sengkang or Junit, I think there will be a backlash in the next election because people just don't like this sort of dominance.
Right.
I don't think it's very likely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so here we have it. Calvin thinks that the satisfactory result would be status quo.
Yes.
Not losing any more GRCs.
Yes.
Not winning anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Ken, thanks for your time, Calvin.
Remember to take your probiotics.
Yeah, that's important,
Yes.
I think.
Thank you.
What's that again? The texture of the shit should be not too soft.
And not too hard.
Not too hard.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, cool.
See you all guys next week.
This podcast is powered by Audio-Technica.